Hey, folks! If you, as I did yesterday, tuned into Georgia versus Edrick Faust, and you hopefully you reacted to something. Well, that something is that Mr. Faust's defense attorney was in contempt of court, fined $1,000 for it, and this is under the Georgia grape law, which states that you basically do not bring up the victim's sexual history without prior welcome to the YouTubes, where we have to be very, very careful of what the words we use. It's not allowed without prior consent from the court to bring up somebody's sexual history. Let's listen to the prosecution, what they say happened.
Do you have a motion? Mr. Yamajo.
Yes, Judge, because I think this relates to our ruling as to 412 evidence, which I just think Mr. Cruz violated in a manner that borders on placing in contempt, quite frankly. Mr. Cruz just intimated about the possibility of prior consensual contact that resulted in Mr. Faust's DNA being present in Ms. Baker's body outside of the complained of contact, which would be previous sexual contact that requires 412 notice, Your Honor. So I think Mr. Cruz has quite intentionally actually violated the court's order, which court has made clear to him after multiple hearings on the issue. And so I'd like the court to instruct Mr. Cruz that that's, again, I guess for the third time now, that that's a wholly inappropriate suggestion to raise in any manner before the jury without having given notice, which he has repeatedly failed to do during the deadline set by the court. Or
the prosecution here is absolutely correct in the interpretation on what Rule 412 means. Now, he's going to be a bit repetitive here because he's quite upset.
Or from the point at which the court reiterated the fact that he had failed to procedurally give notice prior to today's date, which would be, well late of the time period in which he would have to do it. It would be 10 days late if he gave it today, but he has not. I would say further to the court that Mr. Cruz has represented to the court that he has no evidence other than what's in the state's file. Now, I guess he's making reference to this random tip that was received that Ms. Baker may or may not have been in a Mexican restaurant, which again doesn't say anything about her alleged contact with Mr. Faust. So there is no evidence supporting this, which is a finding the court would have to make, even if Mr. Cruz had provided proper notice, which he has not done. And now in opening statements after a week of jury selections has intentionally violated the court's order. So I'm asking the court to instruct Mr. Cruz not to engage in any further statements regarding that type of allegation, as the court has already instructed him, and to refrain from engaging in any questioning after opening statements, as is prohibited by Rule 412. So that's the state's objection that Mr. Cruz has intentionally violated the rape shield law, and the instructions that the state is asking the court to give Mr. Cruz again for the third time.
In just a moment, sir. Yes, of course.
Yeah, it is called the grape shield law. This is to protect a victim of assault from having their sexual history out in court as a defense for the alleged assailant. Understandable. Very, very understandable. This is not just an allegation of grape. This is a cold case from 2001. This is a murder case where the defendant is accused of felony murder, grape, sodomizing, and arson, and breaking the whole there is a lot in here. There's also, because his DNA was found inside her, there is another person's DNA inside her. But we will get to that later. So I'm just forewarning here, this is not just a grape case. So this, but now we'll listen to what the prosecution claimed. Now let's hear what the defense attorney actually said.
They never searched Chris Melton's apartment. They never searched Chris Melton's car for blood. There's a gentleman you'll hear about by the name of Lindsay Baker. He begged, you'll hear, he begged law enforcement, search his car. Did you search his car? Did you search his car? But what you will learn is, and the state already told you this, when Chris Melton came to Athens, he didn't bring his truck back. He rode in Josh's truck. And law enforcement never searched his car for blood. They didn't care. You won't hear evidence presented by the state that they searched Mr. Melton's car. You won't hear evidence by the state that they searched Mr. Melton's apartment. You won't hear evidence from the state that they searched Mr. Baker's parents' home. In regards to the claim that Mr. Melton made that he saw Ms. Baker 6 days before her death, law enforcement never attempted to confirm that. They just took his word for it. Parents didn't confirm it. No one confirmed it. They just simply, well, Chris said it, so it must mean it's true. Let's talk about the forensics. I've already talked to you about the hair. There's no, and I'm gonna talk about this twice. When law enforcement met with, and the state told you this, when law enforcement met with Mr. Faust in the interview, what they told Mr. Faust was that your DNA was found in a house in Deer Park. You will hear no evidence that Mr. Faust's DNA was found in any place other than Ms. Baker's body. His DNA was not in the house, as you're saying, in the house because it's in Ms. Baker's body. There's no DNA of Mr. Faust ever being present in that house. And you will hear he is adamant. I have never been to, I don't know anybody over there. He's going to say that. What law enforcement did not do, matter of fact, before I get to that, there are no handprints belonging to Mr. Faust. There are no fingerprints that the state will present to you belonging to Mr. Faust. There is nothing inside of the house that the state will be able to present to you to connect Mr. Faust with Miss Baker's house. The state wants you to believe that Mr. Faust is smart enough to enter Miss Baker's home, fight with Miss Baker, kill Miss Baker without leaving a trace of evidence behind, sexually assault her, right? Because they're charging him with aggravated sodomy based on the allegation that he sexually assaulted Miss Baker anally, but sexually assaulted her without leaving any identifiable DNA behind, then escaped Deer Park just unseen. But he is dumb enough to leave his DNA in her body and commit the charged crimes at the busiest time of the morning. And I don't think the state ever told you what time they are alleging that Mr. Faust committed this crime. Their window is between 8 a.m. and probably around 8:45. And you don't leave your common sense at home. You know what's going on at 8 in the morning and 8:45 outside your neighborhoods. But you have to decide as the jurors, does that make sense? That's the question you have to answer. The DNA. I think this is the most important part of this case that I would like to talk about. We talked about the DNA test conducted on the pubic hair found on Miss Baker's butt. But I would like to talk about the sexual assault kit that the state talks to you about. So the sexual assault kit, as the state explained to you, came back with multiple DNA profiles. Mr. Faust was one of the identifiable profiles. Mr. Melton was one of the identifiable profiles. Mr. Faust's DNA. If I understand the DNA correctly, and I may not, the testimony would be much clearer than me, was found in her vagina and her mouth. Chris Melton will tell you that Ms. Baker engaged in vaginal and oral sex. That is a very important fact in this case. However, as you know from the charges in the indictment, Mr. Faust is charged with aggravated sodomy for anal sexual assault. Chris Melton told law enforcement when they asked him, do you all engage in anal sex? No, never. She doesn't do anything like that. You know, we just have normal sex. Well, lo and behold, when they get the DNA results back, the only identifiable profile in Ms. Baker's anus is Chris Melton's profile. Now, something the state mentioned, they told you in opening that gravity could make the DNA go into that area. Well, what the state says isn't evidence, but what Dr. Falzone says will be evidence. He is the medical examiner. He's the person that did the autopsy. And what he is going to tell you is that it is clear that Ms. Baker was sexually assaulted anally based on the injuries. Well, let me use the right language. She's going to say it's consistent. That's the proper language. That her injuries to her anus are consistent with sexual assault anally. And the only identifiable DNA profile is Chris Milton's.
Yeah, if this gets through the monetization part, I will be surprised. But it's important to listen to this, and I know this is a gruesome crime that the state alleged Mr. Faust has committed. The details are probably much worse than is spoken about here. So if you're going to follow that trial, be forewarned. It's not going... let's just say I will be surprised if it gets me any new viewers.
The state will not present any evidence to you supporting that Mr. Faust ever engaged in anal sex with Ms. Baker. It is important that you focus on the evidence that is presented. He is charged with aggravated sodomy, and his DNA is not even identified in her anus. There's no evidence supporting that Mr. Faust had anal sex with Ms. Baker anytime or anywhere. The state will not be able to present evidence supporting that Mr. Faust and Ms. Baker engaged in that act. Now I would like to talk to you about what I call directing the investigation. You will learn that once law enforcement became aware of Mr. Melton's DNA in Ms. Baker's body, they learned that information that Chris Melton had previously told them was false. Okay? You heard the state tell you that DNA typically in certain places only lasts about 5 days. I left out the place. Mr. Melton's DNA was also found in her vagina as well. So his DNA was found in her vagina, anus. Mr. Faust's DNA was found in vagina and mouth. Okay? But you will learn that this DNA of Chris Melton, as the state said, only lasts about 5 days. When law enforcement interviewed Chris Melton, they asked him when was the last time he saw her. He said 10 days, which I said was in line with their fight that he was approached about in June of 2001, the week before.
So, why isn't the other person charged? That's a good question, but that's not actually the question for this video. I'm playing this so we can compare what is actually being said with what the prosecution claimed was said.
Or death. Law enforcement says, well, look, and I'm going to make sure I say this correctly. Instead of interrogating Chris Melton and confronting him and saying, hey, you've been dishonest with us, something's not right here, we've seen the picture of your hands, what law enforcement tells Mr. Melton is they...
Oh yeah, the hands. The other who should be perhaps a suspect. Let's see if I can find it real quick here. Well, I can tell you about it. 2 days after the murder, grape, arson, the other person whose DNA is in the body, his hands are photographed filled with wounds and lacerations as if he has been in a violent fight. Mr. Faust, they don't have any pictures of his hands, but they have of the other person.
They sit down and meet with him. And you're going to hear from the lead detective in this case, Elizabeth Bigham, that she asked Chris, and this is a quote, so was there ever a time in those 10 days, whatever up, leading up into her death, that y'all just had a quick booty call or met up real fast or anything like that? Chris Melton responded, no. She knew what the DNA evidence was telling her. Ms. Bigham then tells Chris, I need you to be 150% honest with me. And I know that what I'm about to ask you, and I emphasize this language, is not what has been said for 23 years. And that may hinder you from wanting to be honest with me. But you've got to be honest with me. She then tells Chris Melton, look, your DNA would only last in her body 2 to 3 days. And that she needs to, and you'll hear this, she needs to separate Chris Melton's DNA from bad guy's DNA. She says this. I need to be able to explain it. I need to be able to explain it. Jeremy Howell tells Chris Melton, and you'll hear Jeremy Howell testify, that the timeline needs to be correct. Everything needs to make sense. And if we know that this window is here and you're over here, I can't explain this gap. You need to be here. But Chris Melton, and you have to decide if he sticks to the story because he knows he's lied before, continuously denies being with Miss Baker of her death. They asked Mr. Melton, well, you know, were you with her the night before? You had a booty call with her at 12 o'clock? He says no. They said, well, how about 2 days before? No. Well, how about 3 days, Mr. Melton? Were you with her 3 days before? No. And eventually they get Mr. Melton for the first time to say in this interview, for 23 years, he changes his story to, you know what? Well, we maybe did it on Sunday. We might have did it on Sunday.
He lied?
And then Elizabeth Bigham tells Chris Melton in this interview, not an interrogation, in an interview, I think we just have to be able to explain it. I think we just have to be able to explain it. And that is our job, is to explain it. So we can then go after the one that we think did this. She laughs. I mean, you know, and evidence will show Mr. Faust is the individual that she was referring to. My client. When Chris continues to refuse to put himself and Miss Baker together, Miss Bigham, she says, if you're like, you know what? I effing lied about it 23 years ago because I was a scared, terrified kid. And you're right. I had a booty call with her that night. I left at midnight and I don't know what happened after that. It'll be, thank you. Have a nice day. We'll let you know what happens. Like, that's it. We just want to be able to explain it and make it make sense so we can focus on this, you know? So they can focus on this. You'll learn the lead investigator in this case, Elizabeth Bigham, told Chris Melton it was okay if he changed his story or changed his timeline of when he was with Miss Baker. And if he admitted to lying to police for 23 years so that she could explain away his DNA and put the focus on Mr. Faust and the responsibility for Miss Baker's murder on Mr. Faust, everything would be okay. She would explain it away. When Mr. Melton would not help Miss Bigham explain away his DNA, despite the 23 years of conflicting statements from Mr. Melton, and evidence, and you have to decide, but evidence pointing away from Mr. Faust's involvement in this case, the allure of being a hero, the allure of being on TV, being the officer to solve the 23-year-old Tara Baker case became too strong. And we ended up in a courtroom before 12 jurors to decide Mr. Faust's fate. The allure of being on TV became more powerful than following the evidence. And on May 9th, 2024, while Mr. Faust had just finished working, he's at Walmart buying a Simply Lemonade, police cars swoop in on him and put him in handcuffs and arrest him. Solely because, and this is very important, and follow the state's timeline, solely because his DNA was present in this case. At the time of Mr. Faust's arrest, which you'll learn, it's not, and this is, we told you, this is not a DNA case. We didn't come here to fight with DNA. You will learn Chris Melton's DNA is present, unidentified DNA is present, Mr. Faust's DNA is present. And based on his DNA being identified, he was arrested and charged with burglary, based on DNA alone. He was arrested and charged with aggravated sodomy in the anus, even though his DNA isn't present. He was charged with 4 counts of felony murder. He was charged with Nally's murder. And every other count in this indictment solely based on his DNA being present, along with Chris Melton's DNA. Let's discuss the state's evidence against Mr. Faust. And I thank you for your patience. Do you all need a break? Let's discuss the state's evidence against Mr. Faust. to meet its burden of proof to establish beyond a reasonable doubt that Mr. Faust killed Ms. Baker, the state is going to rely on, they're going to present evidence of Mr. Faust's DNA being present. Okay, that isn't anything we're fighting with. As I told you, Mr. Faust's DNA profile was not the only DNA profile present, but these are the questions you have to answer, or the state has to answer. Mr. Faust's DNA profile being present does not tell you why this crime occurred or how this crime occurred. You have to ask for that evidence. It does not tell you when the contact happened. And we don't know. It's been 24 years, 25 years. They've charged him with rape. They have to present the evidence that it was rape. The only thing that we could possibly say that you're here in the testimony in this case is that maybe when she was out at the Mexican restaurant, we don't know because they never followed up on it. They came into contact. We don't know. But that's a question the state has to answer. If you're saying it's rape, explain to us why his DNA is there. If you're saying it's rape, prove it. It does not tell us how the contact between Miss Baker and Mr. Faust took place.
We can approach.
That was what you heard in the beginning. This is the Rule 412 violation. Here's the thing which I am weirded out about. This is the state's case. They are alleging that there is no other possible way for the DNA to be in her body other than grape. They, the state, in my opinion, put her history up as evidence. That is my opinion. Now, this attorney was found in violation of 412. Fined $1,000 by this court. For me, there is another person's DNA there who has lied for the past 23, 24 years about his whereabouts. The state's case relies on her sexual history by claiming what the other person did wasn't. Only Mr. Faust. So I don't agree with the ruling here. And it weirds me out that it seems like the court here and the prosecution is denying a fundamental defense for Mr. Faust. Now, could it be that Mr. Faust is guilty of all of this? Yes, of course. That's besides the point. Mr. Faust, he has to have a proper defense. And when the state puts the victim's sexual history up there by saying, that guy didn't grape her, but that guy did, the defense has to be, prove it. All right. I hope you guys aren't too weirded out about this and understand the principle behind all of this. I'm going to keep an eye out on this trial. Don't think I have the time to live stream it because, as you know, I'm going to cover some trial with Mo in the Deep End. But I will keep an eye out, and I will get you reports from this trial. All right, folks. That is what I had for you for this time. From me and Mr. Jingles, you all have a good one, and I'll see you in the next stream or video. Bye-bye.
Thank you.